Greetings, friends! It's time once again for another In Other News. Now, I know the huge news that everybody's talking about is the death of our good friend Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, but quite frankly, I don't get that excited about it. I know the whole class is excited about it because they think they're going to get points if more leaders die, and that's cool. But I just don't think that his death's going to change that much. I mean, the fact that the country's been in a semi-civil war state and it's supported by the outside world and the rebels have already been recognized, to me, is like, no, that situation's done. Gaddafi's death is symbolic. It's not really going to change the equation on the ground. Here's a story, though, and there's a bunch of good news stories for me to choose from. I really need to do like a bunch of in the news, like back to back to back for the next week just to catch up. But this one is way off of the radar of any Western press because everybody's focused on Gaddafi, and I think it's of much greater significance long term. And it's a simple little story. It's actually probably boring to most people. And the story's something like this. In other news, Russia just signed a free trade pact with 7 other ex-Soviet states. Booyah! That went down yesterday, October 20th. Now, for those of you in my class, you know where I'm going with this already, I think. I hope, pray that you've been learning this. But Russia sees its future very much in an Eastern perspective in terms of where it's going to have economic and political and perhaps military ties. That maybe is not so surprising. But the more surprising thing happening right now is it looks like the ex-Soviet Union is starting to kind of reunify, and that has some Western speculists all up in arms saying, oh my God, Vladimir Putin's trying to reinstate the Soviet Union. It's like, no, not really. The real spin that I want you to think about on this is that this is a voluntary association between these states, and that it is becoming very, very, very quickly an alternative to the floundering EU. Boom! That's what I want you to think about. Now, what's the story itself? Kind of a standard free trade pact deal. They actually haven't even disclosed exactly what commodities they're talking about. But in a standard free trade pact option, they're going to lower, if not eliminate, tariffs, that is import-export taxes, between all of the countries that have signed this on a variety of commodities. It's not 100% free trade for everything. They say, no, 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 we have a long list of commodities that we're all going to drop all tariffs/taxes on. The choice of the members of this new entity is, of course, what's most interesting to me. Russia's at the core, but it also includes Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, and Tajikistan. So some Central Asian states, some Caucasus states, and some Eastern European states. And all of these entities we've just named did indeed used to be part of full-on the Soviet Union. None of these were even satellite states. These were all parts of, at the time, they were republics of the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republics. So, Union, I'm sorry, not United. So what we have is it does look like, okay, this is starting to be the formation. It's a free trade pact. That's it. That's it. But there's some history behind this, and it does look like it's starting to be kind of a reunification process where Russia, now that it's back, it's powerful, and it's a world power again, does seem to be reasserting itself, mostly economically, to kind of pull back, not into a new Soviet Union, but it's expanding its influence back out into areas that it used to have a lot of influence, and that's quite important. Now, this isn't even a new thing, like I just said, because when the Soviet Union collapsed back in 1991, they actually immediately formed up something called the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States. And this is a very loose confederation, and the kind of whole basis for it was, hey, all of these entities, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it went from one political entity to 15 new sovereign states. And all of it used to be one political entity. And so the Russians said, hey, here's the deal, dude. You're all free. You're all independent states now. Kazakhstan and Belarus, you're a new country. But we've been working together under a single union and single government and single economic system for like 80 years. And we can't just change it overnight. We're all kind of reliant on each other. Like, you guys make the food down in Ukraine that we used to import, and Belarus makes the tanks that we used to export to other places. I'm just making this stuff up. And there's sugar beets say in Lithuania that we used to ship to Kazakhstan. So this loose confederation of all the 15 states that used to be the Soviet Union, it was never really anything in writing. It was kind of always a little casual of, hey, let's just continue to kind of talk to each other and have open dialogue so that we can coordinate economic policy while everything gets sorted out. That was in place since 1991. Not much ever really came of it, though, because a lot of states really hated the Soviet Union. Places like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they jumped. Boom, they bailed. They're like, no, we don't even want to be part of the CIS. We want to be part of the EU, and they jumped over the European Union. And lots of other countries in Eastern Europe, like the Poles or the Czechs, they kind of leaned and focused on becoming European and leaving Russia behind and Russia's influence behind, and many of them did. However, this kind of CIS idea has always been there, and this does seem to be reinvigorating the idea. But even that old CIS thing that never amounted to much was not the only thing that's ever been going on. For those that follow my news assessments, or you're in my class, you know that I've also talked about that I guess it was just a month ago, August 16th, just over a month ago, Vladimir Putin came out in a news conference and said something to the effect of, we would like to create a Eurasian Economic Union. And everybody's like, what? What the hell do you mean? And he said, well, I mean, Russia's back, baby. And isn't it natural that Russia would have strong trade ties and economic ties and perhaps, political ties with its neighbors, with its next-door neighbors that used to be part of the Soviet freaking Union? And without being a Putin cheerleader here, or, a lot of people think that I'm like in love with Russia. I'm not moving to Russia anytime soon. Trust me on this. But I look at it from a very practical, realistic standpoint, and yes, Russia's a major power, and of course it should have strong economic trade and political ties with its direct neighborhood, with the states that border itself. So this to me is no great surprise, but Putin is really kind of making it public, saying, yes, we should form a Eurasian, notice the terminology, a Eurasian Economic Union, where us Eurasian countries should lower tariffs and taxes and trade more and do more and work together with economic and fiscal policy more, and perhaps political and military policy later on. And again, he said this a month ago, and he was building on free trade pacts which Russia has already had in place with Kazakhstan and Belarus. So these three entities already had kind of a free trade area going on, and he's saying, yes, we have this already, and I think we should expand it. And again, here's the important part. It's an alternative to the European Union, and Putin is being exceptionally savvy by wording things the way he is and saying things at this exact time. What do I mean by this exact time? Because the European Union sucks right now, man. All of those Eastern European countries and others have for decades been reaching out, wanting to be part of the rich European Union, the rich and stable European Union, where if you can get your country in, you're going to get richer in the European Union. And my friends, this is a crucial turning point because Vladimir Putin understands this, and he's saying, do you still want to be in the European Union? You want to join Germany, who's having to use their tax dollars to bail out Greece right now, while the whole euro monetary unit may be getting ready to collapse? I think it was a very strategic move on Putin's part to be suggesting, hey, why are you guys looking to the West? The West is crippled right now. Their economies suck right now. Mother Russia's does not. Neither does China. Over on the other side of Eurasia. Remember, he keeps saying Eurasia, not Europe. So they're really creating this kind of alternative union with a lot of countries that may have a lot more to offer each other than tying themselves to the Europeans, who have no great demand for virtually anything right now because their economy sucks so bad. Now, bring it back up. That's what he said a month ago. Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan already had a free trade pact amongst them. Putin makes this announcement. We should have a Eurasian Union. And bam! October 20th, now 7 states have joined it. They didn't even tie this together in the press, by the way. They didn't say, oh, these 7 states are joining the Eurasian Union that Putin talked about. They made no mention of that. That's what makes me very intrigued by it all. This is kind of happening organically and quickly. It's happening. Now, for those of you that know my rants and raves, you also may have already started to ask about another international entity that involves a lot of these same players. So you had the former Soviet Union that collapsed, and you had the CIS, and that really never did too much. Then you had Russia forming trade pacts with Kazakhstan and Belarus, and now you have them forming a trade pact with 7 countries now. And this can get overlapped with yet another map we'll stick in here. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Bam, 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 double bam. I think there's just so much going on here. You got the SCO, which has Russia as one of the core, and China, and a bunch of Central Asian states, many of which are now overlapping in this free trade area, this Eurasian Economic Union that is fast coming together. Now do you see why I'm all excited about what's going on with just a basic free trade story happening in Eurasia? Dude, it's way more, and it's indicating in a very big way the future of Eurasia, mostly on the Asia side, but Eurasia as a whole, possibly lessening reliance and even weakening the European Union, and certainly it's kind of dissing the European Union, saying, yeah, that was yesterday's trade bloc. Here's the one you want to be in. If you think about that SCO group, Russia and China, let's pretend Russia's stagnant, because their economy actually is not gigantically blowing up or anything like that. It's not stagnant, but it's not growing that fast. Not like China. And Russia knows this, and Russia knows that China's the future, as most of these other East Asian economies are. The Koreas are blowing up. Japan's the number 3 economy on planet Earth. ASEAN down there, another bloc, has been blowing up and growing really fast. That's where the world action is, and Russia, I think, is very appropriately saying, yes, that looks good over there. Putin has in multiple ways and multiple times kind of iterated out loud, oh, we're going to be focusing on our relationship with China, not so much worrying about the EU. We're not dissing the EU, but we don't care that much about it. We're not cultivating ties in a very big way. Asia's where it's at. That's where we want to lean to. And you have this SCO group, which has been in place since, I believe, 2000. That's kind of new, too. All this is new. The SCO is only like a decade old, and it initially formed itself as a kind of political/military not a union, but a collaboration between Russia, China, and those Central Asian states. But they've already talked economics and free trade stuff in that group too. So you start to pile up all these international organizations, these entities, this free trade bloc, this Eurasian Economic Union, the SCO, which is already in place and been growing under the kind of political military umbrella, but also talking about free trade. And to me, it's like, this is exciting stuff. There's the future of Eurasia right there. And that's what I wanted to talk about in other news. Our main man, Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister, soon to be President of Russia once again, who is leading his country into reformation of some sort of perhaps ex-Soviet bloc, but more just a free trade area, a Eurasian Economic Union, which is soon to be linking up everything from China all the way over to Belarus and Ukraine. And let me end on this, because I'm going to do the next in the news on this. What's most fascinating to me also about this particular free trade bloc that's being set up today is that Ukraine's in it. What? Ukraine is a pivotal player in all of this, because Ukraine's been trying to get into the EU, applied to the EU. A bunch of EU countries want the Ukraine in the EU. And this, to me, is, again, a very kind of black eye for the European Union that Ukraine, which has been leaning very hard to the West, suddenly just signed a free trade pact with the East, with its former Russian buddies. Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. Now it's an independent country that desperately was trying to go west for the last decade and a half, and now it's migrating back east. And that signifies a sign of the times. And I'll end on that. Party on.